The Galactic Council had one rule that every species learned before venturing into the void: never set foot on a class 1-2 Deathworld, not even for rescue missions, not even to recover priceless artifacts, and certainly not to prove a point. But humans? Humans had never been good at following rules. When the stellar harmony crashed on Kythara Prime, a planet where the very air could dissolve metal and the ground shifted like liquid fire, the alien crew knew they were dead. The rescue ships would never come. No species in the galaxy was foolish enough to land on a world that had claimed 17 previous expeditions. That's when Marcus Chen, the lone human aboard, did something that would be talked about in alien taverns for centuries to come. He smiled, cracked his knuckles, and said words that would echo through galactic history. Well, looks like it's time to get to work. What happened next would redefine how the galaxy saw humanity forever. The emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the smoke-filled bridge of the stellar harmony. Captain Zethkar's forearms worked frantically at the controls, his chitinous fingers clicking against crystalline interfaces that sparked and died with each passing second. The ship bucked and rolled as it tore through the atmosphere of Kythara Prime, a world that appeared on star charts with skull symbols and warnings in 17 different languages. "Hull breach on Deck 7!" shouted Communications Officer Veltar, her trunk-like appendage wrapped around a support beam as she fought to stay upright. "The acid rain is eating through our outer plating." Marcus Chen, the only human on the bridge and seemingly the only one not panicking, watched the approaching surface through the cracked viewport. Where others saw certain death, he saw variables to calculate, problems to solve. His engineering background kicked in as he analyzed the trajectory, wind patterns, and surface composition scrolling across his personal tablet. "Can we adjust our descent angle by 15 degrees? Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Captain Zethkar's compound eyes swiveled toward him. "Human Marcus, we are crashing on a class 1-2 Deathworld. There is no survival here. The atmospheric composition alone will kill us within hours, assuming the surface doesn't swallow us whole first." Marcus shrugged, a gesture that never failed to confuse his alien crewmates. "Maybe, but I'd rather crash into that rocky outcropping than the sulfur marsh." "At least rocks don't digest you while you're still alive." The Zeltharian captain's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was their species' equivalent of nervous laughter. Despite their hopeless situation, he found himself adjusting their descent vector. In the months they'd served together, Marcus had never steered them wrong, even when his suggestions seemed impossibly reckless by galactic standards. The impact came with a grinding shriek of metal against stone. The ship bounced once, twice, then slid sideways down a slope of crystalline rock before coming to rest against a formation of twisted mineral spires. Emergency systems failed one by one, leaving them in darkness broken only by the alien aurora dancing across Kythera's toxic sky. "Status report," Captain Zethkar wheezed, purple blood trickling from a gash across his forehead. Engineer Nixall, a being that resembled a metallic flower with too many petals, unfolded from the emergency position she'd assumed during impact. "Main power offline. Life support has maybe 6 hours of backup power. Hull integrity is compromised in 14 sections. The atmospheric processors are completely destroyed." "Communications?" the captain asked. Veltar's response was a deflated trunk gesture that needed no translation. Marcus stood and brushed debris from his standard-issued jumpsuit. Through the cracks in the hull, he could already see the corrosive atmosphere beginning to eat away at exposed metal surfaces. The air outside glowed with a sickly green phosphorescence, and the ground seemed to pulse with its own malevolent life. "So we're stranded on a planet that's basically trying to dissolve us, with no way to call for help, and maybe 6 hours of breathable air," Marcus summarized. "Anyone else feeling optimistic about this situation?" In their cultures, this was the moment for ritual death preparations, final prayers to their respective deities, or perhaps a dignified discussion about the most painless way to end their suffering. Marcus walked to the breach in the hull and peered outside. The landscape was like nothing in Earth's geological textbooks. Spires of crystal grew from the ground at impossible angles, their surfaces reflecting and refracting the aurora light into rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. The soil was a mixture of metallic sand and organic compounds that shifted and flowed like a living thing. In the distance, geysers of superheated liquid shot into the air, leaving clouds of vapor that glowed with their own internal light. "The gravity's about 0.8 Earth standard," Marcus mused, pulling out a small handheld scanner. "Atmospheric pressure is manageable, though we'll need filter masks for the particulates. Temperatures holding steady around 42 Celsius. Hot but workable." Workable? Dr. Yixwith, the ship's medic, and a member of a species that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a jellyfish, flowed closer to Marcus. "Human. That atmosphere contains sulfuric acid compounds, metallic dust particles, and 17 different types of caustic gases. The ground itself is partially composed of digestive bacteria that evolved to break down crashed spacecraft. This planet has killed every expedition that has ever attempted to land here." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I read the briefing files. 17 expeditions, ranging from a Valorian research team with full environmental suits to a Kethmore military unit in powered armor, all dead within 72 hours. And yet you seem remarkably unconcerned," Captain Zethkar observed. "Oh, I'm concerned," Marcus replied, already moving toward the ship's emergency supply lockers. "But panic won't keep us alive. Planning might." He began pulling items from the lockers: emergency rations, water purification tablets, basic tools, medical supplies, and most importantly, the portable atmospheric processors designed for short-term survival operations. Each crew member carried personal emergency gear rated for their species-specific needs. "The previous expeditions all made the same mistake," Marcus continued as he sorted through the supplies. "They tried to maintain their normal living standards using technology, full environmental suits, sealed habitats, complex life support systems. All of that tech is just more stuff that can break down in an environment like this. And your alternative is?" Nixall asked, her metallic petals rustling with skepticism. Marcus grinned, an expression that his alien friends had learned usually preceded something they would later describe as typically human insanity. "We adapt. We use what the planet gives us instead of fighting against it. We build simple, redundant systems using materials that the environment can't easily break down. And we do it fast, before our current air supply runs out." The temperature inside the ship was already rising as the hull's thermal regulation failed. Outside, something that might have been wind howled between the crystal spires, carrying with it the sound of metal corroding. "I'll need everyone's EVG admissory processors," Marcus said. "Also, any metallic components that aren't essential for immediate survival, especially anything made from duranium or crystalline matrices." "You want us to dismantle our life support equipment?" Dr. Ishwith's voice took on a pitch that indicated severe distress in her species. "Trust me," Marcus said, already beginning to disassemble his own processor with practiced efficiency. "I've got an idea." Captain Zethkar watched the human work with the same fascination he might show for a dangerous but intriguing alien artifact. In the months they'd served together, Marcus had consistently demonstrated an ability to find unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible problems. It was, the captain had learned, a distinctly human trait. "What exactly are you planning to build?" Zethkar asked. Marcus looked up from his work, tool in hand, debris scattered around his feet. "A shelter. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech. Just something that'll keep us alive long enough to figure out our next move." "From what materials?" "The supply lockers contain standard emergency provisions, not construction materials." "That's the beauty of it," Marcus replied, gesturing toward the hull breach where the planet's hostile environment waited. "We're sitting on a construction site. This whole planet is one big materials depot, if you know what to look for." The alien crew members exchanged glances that would have been meaningful in their respective cultures, but were lost on Marcus. To them, the planet outside was death incarnate, To Marcus, it was beginning to look like a challenging but manageable engineering problem. The ship groaned around them as the corrosive atmosphere continued its work. Time was running short, and they all knew it. But as Marcus continued his preparations with the methodical calm of someone who had faced impossible odds before, something that might have been hope began to stir among the crew. It was, they would later realize, their first real lesson in what humans meant when they talked about survival instinct. Not the careful, calculated risk management that most species employed, but something far more primitive and powerful. The absolute refusal to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. Marcus finished disassembling the last atmospheric processor and stood. "All right, everybody. Time to go outside and get to work. And whatever happens, try not to breathe the air directly until I can get some basic filtration set up." As the crew prepared to venture onto the surface of Kithara Prime, none of them could have predicted that they were about to witness the birth of a legend that would be retold in every civilized system for generations to come. The moment Marcus stepped onto the surface of Kithara Prime, he felt the planet trying to kill him. The air itself was a visible thing, shimmering with corrosive particles that made his eyes water even through his emergency mask. The ground beneath his feet shifted and bubbled, releasing small puffs of gas that made the metal soles of his boots hiss and smoke. But Marcus had spent 3 years working in the sulfur mines of Titan before joining the Stellar Harmony's crew. He knew hostile environments, and more importantly, he knew how to read them. "Stay close to me," he called back to his crewmates, who emerged from the ship's wreckage with the careful movements of beings entering their own tomb. "And whatever you do, don't touch anything directly with bare skin." The landscape around them defied easy description. Crystal formations jutted from the ground at seemingly random angles, their surfaces reflecting the planet's aurora in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Between the crystals, the ground was a mixture of metallic sand and what looked like organic mud. Dr. Yickswith extended one of her sensor tendrils toward a nearby crystal formation, then jerked it back as the air around the crystal began to glow. "The mineral matrix is generating some kind of field. Electromagnetic, possibly thermal." "Good," Marcus said, pulling out his scanner and taking readings. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." "Good." Captain Zethkar's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Human Marcus, that field could disrupt our electronics or cause cellular damage." Marcus nodded, still taking measurements. "It could. But it's also a power source. Those crystals are piezoelectric. They generate electrical current when subjected to mechanical stress. The planet's seismic activity, the thermal changes, even the wind is making them produce power." He approached one of the smaller crystal formations, careful to avoid direct contact. The scanner in his hand showed a steady electrical output, variable but consistent. "Engineer Nixall, I need you to help me fashion some conducting cables. We're going to tap into this." The metallic flower being rustled nervously. "The electromagnetic field could damage our equipment." "Only if we're stupid about it," Marcus replied, already beginning to strip insulation from some of the emergency wiring they'd salvaged from the ship. "We just need to build proper grounding and use the crystal's own resonance frequency to regulate the output." While Marcus worked, the rest of the crew watched in fascination and growing hope as he began to make sense of their impossible situation. Communications Officer Veltar had positioned herself near the ship's wreckage, using her species' natural electromagnetic sensitivity to monitor their surroundings for changes. "There's something approaching from the northwest," she reported, her trunk swaying as she concentrated. "Multiple somethings. Large." Marcus looked up from his work. In the distance, moving between the crystal spires, shapes were emerging from the planet's toxic haze. They were massive, easily 3 times the size of the crashed ship, with bodies that seemed to be part machine and part living organism. As they moved, the ground beneath them rippled and flowed, as if responding to their presence. "Native life forms," Dr. Yickswith observed, her medical scanners working frantically. "But the readings are strange. They're partially inorganic. Silicon-based structures integrated with metallic components." "Are they hostile?" Captain Zethkar asked. his forearms instinctively reaching for weapons that would be useless against creatures that size. Marcus studied the approaching entities through his scanner's zoom function. They moved with purpose but not aggression, their forms shifting and adapting to the terrain as they traveled. When they passed near the crystal formations, the electromagnetic fields changed, becoming more stable and organized. "I don't think they're hostile," Marcus said slowly. "I think they're part of the planet's ecosystem, maybe even part of its maintenance system." Nixal's petals trembled. "Look at how they interact with the crystals. They're not just moving through the landscape, they're managing it, adjusting the electromagnetic fields, redistributing the mineral content of the soil, probably maintaining the atmospheric balance." The largest of the creatures had stopped about 100 meters away. It was clearly observing them, though whether it had anything resembling eyes was impossible to determine. Its surface was a flowing mixture of metallic components and what looked like living rock, constantly shifting and reforming. "It's trying to communicate," Veltar reported, her electromagnetic sensitivity picking up patterns in the fields around them. "The signal is complex. Mathematical progressions, harmonic frequencies." Marcus set down his tools and pulled out his personal tablet, connecting it to Veltar's communications array. "Can you translate the patterns into something we can understand?" "I can try." The elephant-like alien's trunk swayed as she concentrated, her natural abilities interfacing with the ship's remaining computational power. "It's asking about our purpose here, the translation is difficult, whether we're builders or destroyers." Marcus looked at the creature, then at the cable and crystal array he'd been constructing. "Tell it we're builders." "Show it what I'm doing here." Veltar transmitted the information, and the response came immediately. The creature moved closer, its form flowing and shifting as it approached. When it reached the crystal formation Marcus had been working with, it extended part of itself toward the jury-rigged electrical system. "It's examining your work, Dr. Cherry." Ewith observed, her scanners showing increased activity around the creature. "The readings are, this is remarkable. It's enhancing what you've built." The creature's metallic components interfaced directly with Marcus's crude electrical system, and suddenly the power output from the crystal formation increased tenfold. More than that, it became perfectly regulated, stable, and sustainable. "It understands electrical engineering," Marcus breathed, staring at his scanner in amazement. "It knows what I'm trying to do, and it's helping." The creature withdrew, and Marcus found that his simple power generation system had been upgraded beyond anything he could have achieved alone. The wiring had been restructured using materials that the creature had somehow synthesized from the planet's resources, and the whole system now hummed with steady, reliable power. But the creature wasn't finished. It moved to a nearby area of ground and began to shape the landscape itself. The flowing, organic soil hardened and formed into geometric patterns, creating a foundation that was perfectly level and stable. Crystal growths began to emerge from the ground in organized rows, creating what was unmistakably the framework for some kind of structure. "It's building us a shelter," Captain Zethkar said, his voice filled with wonder. "Not building," Marcus corrected, watching the process with growing understanding. "Teaching. Look at the pattern it's creating. This is instruction." The creature finished its demonstration and moved back, clearly waiting for Marcus to continue. The message was obvious. The planet's inhabitants were willing to help, but they expected the newcomers to do the actual work of survival. Marcus grabbed his tools and moved to the prepared foundation. Now that he understood what the creature was showing him, he could see the elegant logic of it. The crystal framework would provide structure and power generation. The hardened soil would give them a stable base that could resist the planet's corrosive environment. And the whole design worked with the planet's natural systems instead of fighting against them. "Nixal, I need help shaping the framework." "Dr. Yixwith, can you analyze the soil composition and figure out how to make more of that hardening process?" "Captain Veltar, start sorting through our salvage for anything we can use as walls or roofing." As the crew sprang into action, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since the crash: genuine optimism. They were still stranded on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, with no way to call for rescue and limited supplies. But for the first time, survival seemed possible. The creature that had helped them was joined by 2 others, and they positioned themselves around the worksite like curious observers. Occasionally, one would move forward to adjust something the humans had built, always improving the efficiency or stability of their construction. "They're not just helping us," Dr. Yixwith observed as she worked on understanding the soil chemistry. "They're evaluating us, testing to see if we understand their lessons." "Good," Marcus replied, carefully installing one of the salvaged atmospheric processors into the crystal framework. "Because I think we're about to get a lot more lessons." As the alien sun began to set, casting the landscape in shades of copper and gold, the shelter began to take shape. It was unlike anything that appeared in any galactic construction manual, a hybrid of human engineering principles and alien biotechnology that seemed to grow from the planet itself. And watching it all, the native creatures maintained their silent vigil, guardians of a world that was far stranger and more alive than any galactic survey had ever imagined. By the time Kythera's alien sun reached its zenith, the shelter had transformed into something that defied every architectural principle Marcus had ever learned. The structure seemed to breathe with the planet's rhythm, its crystal framework pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that matched the aurora dancing overhead. "The atmospheric readings inside are actually better than ship standard," Dr. Yixes reported, her sensors confirming what they could all feel. The air inside their improvised habitat was clean, properly filtered, and somehow perfectly temperature regulated despite the planet's hostile environment. Marcus ran his hand along one of the walls, marveling at the texture. What had started as salvaged ship plating had been integrated with the planet's organic compounds to create something that was part metal, part living tissue, and entirely functional. The creatures that served as their teachers had shown them how to encourage this fusion, but the actual work had been done by human hands. "The power grid is holding steady," Engineer Nixall announced, her metallic petals reflecting the soft glow from the crystal arrays. "In fact, it's generating more energy than we're using. The excess is being stored in these secondary crystal formations." She gestured to a series of smaller crystals that had grown along the shelter's walls. Marcus had initially thought they were decorative, but his scanner confirmed they were sophisticated energy storage devices, grown rather than manufactured. Captain Zethkar stood at the entrance, watching the native creatures as they moved through their daily routines. "They're maintaining a perimeter around us," he observed. "Not restricting our movement, but definitely monitoring our activities." "Can you blame them?" Marcus replied, checking the water purification system they'd constructed using ship components and local minerals. "For all they know, we're just another group of aliens here to strip mine their world. They want to see what we're really about." The water purification system was particularly impressive. The creatures had shown them how to use the planet's natural filtration processes, channeling groundwater through layers of crystalline sand and organic filters that removed toxins while adding beneficial minerals. The result was water that was not only safe to drink, but actually more nutritious than their emergency rations. "Human Marcus," Dr. Yixes called from where she was examining samples of the local flora. "You should see this." Marcus joined the jellyfish-like medic near a cluster of what he had initially assumed were rocks. Under closer examination, they revealed themselves to be a form of plant life, though unlike anything in his botanical databases. "They're responding to our presence," Dr. Uixes explained, indicating subtle changes in the organism's coloration and structure. "Not just chemical responses to our exhaled gases, but something more complex. They're learning from us." As if to demonstrate her point, one of the plant rocks began to shift and reform, its surface developing patterns that clearly mimicked the design of Marcus's toolkit. Another began producing small quantities of a metallic substance that matched the composition of their ship's hull plating. The entire ecosystem is adaptive, Marcus realized. The creatures, the plants, even the minerals. They don't just maintain balance, they incorporate new elements and find ways to improve the system. This discovery led to Marcus's next breakthrough. Working with Nixau, he began experimenting with ways to integrate their remaining technology into the planet's living systems. Instead of fighting against the corrosive environment, they learned to work with it, allowing the planet's natural processes to enhance and maintain their equipment. The results were remarkable. Their communications array, which had been damaged beyond repair in the crash, was rebuilt using a hybrid of their original technology and the planet's bioelectric systems. The new version was not only functional but more powerful than the original, capable of reaching frequencies that their old equipment couldn't access. "We're getting something," Communications Officer Veltar announced, her trunk swaying with excitement. "It's not from our rescue frequency, but there are signals out there. Multiple sources, some of them very far away." Marcus listened to the static-filled transmissions that Veltar was picking up. Most were in languages he didn't recognize, but occasionally he caught fragments of familiar galactic standard trade route communications. He identified chips passing through nearby systems. If we can boost the signal strength and clean up our transmission, we might be able to contact them. But even as he said it, Marcus found himself hesitating. Their shelter was more than just functional now, it was comfortable. The food they were producing using local resources was more nutritious than anything he'd eaten aboard ship. The air was cleaner, the water purer, and the power systems more reliable than most planetary installations. "Are we certain we want to be rescued?" Captain Zethkar asked, voicing the question that was beginning to occur to all of them. The native creatures had been teaching them more than just survival techniques. Over the past several days, they'd shared glimpses of technologies that were centuries ahead of anything the Galactic Council possessed. Medical treatments that could heal injuries by encouraging the body's own systems to regenerate. Energy systems that drew power from sources that galactic science hadn't even discovered. Communication networks that spanned entire star systems without requiring traditional technology. "Look at what we've learned in just a few days," Dr. Kadne, Yigwith said, her sensors showing readings that would have been impossible with their original equipment. "My medical scans are more detailed and accurate than anything I could do with standard galactic medical technology, and it's all based on principles that we never considered." Marcus walked to the shelter's observation deck, a crystalline platform that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding landscape. In the distance, he could see other structures emerging from the planet's surface. Some were clearly ancient, towering spires that predated any known galactic civilization. Others were newer, and Marcus was beginning to suspect they were built by previous stranded crews who had learned the same lessons they were learning. "Veltar, can you adjust the communications array to scan for artificial structures on the planet's surface?" The elephant-like alien worked at her controls, using the enhanced sensitivity of their new bioelectric systems to penetrate the planet's electromagnetic interference. "There are dozens of them," she reported. Energy signatures consistent with advanced technology, but integrated into the planet's natural systems. Some of them are very large. "Cities?" Nixel asked. "Or research stations," Marcus mused. "Places where other species have come to learn what the planet has to teach." One of the native creatures approached their shelter, its form shifting to communicate through the visual patterns they'd learned to recognize. Dr. Yixwith had become surprisingly adept at reading these communications, her medical background giving her insights into the biological aspects of the creature's language. "It's inviting us to visit one of the other settlements," she translated. "There are others here, representatives from multiple species, all studying and working with the planet's systems." Marcus felt a thrill of excitement. They weren't just surviving on Kythara Prime, they were being invited to join a community of researchers and explorers from across the galaxy, species that the Galactic Council believed were lost or dead, all working together on projects that could revolutionize understanding of life itself. The creatures aren't just inhabitants of this planet, he realized. They're teachers, guardians of knowledge that could transform the entire galaxy. Captain Zefkar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. And the class? 1, 2, Death World designation? Protective camouflage, Marcus replied. The planet doesn't kill visitors who come with hostile intent or try to exploit its resources, but those who are willing to learn and contribute are welcomed and taught. The implications were staggering. Kythara Prime wasn't a death world at all. It was a university, a research center, a place where the galaxy's most advanced minds could work together without the political and territorial conflicts that plagued normal space. So what do we do, Doctor? Yixith asked. Do we send out a rescue signal and return to our normal lives? Or do we stay and see what else we can learn? Marcus looked around at his crewmates. In just a few days, they had accomplished things that would normally require months of planning and specialized equipment. They had built a shelter that was superior to most planetary habitats, using nothing but salvage and local resources. They had established communication with an alien species without any common language. And they had begun to understand technologies that could revolutionize life throughout the galaxy. I vote we stay for a while, he said. At least long enough to properly understand what we've stumbled into. The alien creatures around them seemed to pulse with approval, their bioluminescent patterns creating a light show that reflected their pleasure at the decision. And in the distance, the other settlements on Kythara Prime began to glow more brightly, as if welcoming new students to their ancient academy. The crashed ship that had brought them here already seemed like a relic from another life. They were no longer stranded survivors. They were pioneers on the edge of discoveries that would change everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy. The journey to the nearest settlement took 3 days, though the native creatures could have transported them in hours. Marcus quickly realized that the extended travel time was intentional, another lesson in understanding the planet's deeper systems. They're showing us the infrastructure, he explained to his crewmates as they traveled through landscapes that shifted from crystalline forests to organic metal meadows. Look at how everything connects. The pathways they followed weren't simply trails carved through the landscape. They were part of a vast network of energy channels, information conduits, and transportation systems that spanned the entire planet. The very ground beneath their feet carried data streams that would have overwhelmed the most sophisticated galactic computer networks. Dr. Kapachip, Yickwith had become fascinated with the biological aspects of this infrastructure. Her medical scanners detected what she could only describe as a planetary nervous system, with the native creatures serving as mobile nodes that maintained and upgraded the network constantly. It's like the entire planet is a single organism, she reported, but one that can incorporate and integrate new life forms seamlessly. We're not just visitors anymore. We're becoming part of the system. This integration was already visible in their equipment. The tools and devices they'd modified using local techniques now displayed capabilities that exceeded their original specifications by orders of magnitude. Marcus's scanner could detect quantum fluctuations and dimensional resonances that weren't even theoretical in most galactic scientific circles. Engineer Nixal had formed an almost symbiotic relationship with the planet's mineral-based life forms. Her metallic petals now showed traces of Kytheran crystalline structures, allowing her to interface directly with the planet's geological systems. She could sense underground formations, mineral deposits, and energy flows across vast distances. The other settlement is much larger than I initially detected, she reported on their second day of travel. The structures extend deep underground, possibly connecting to a network of similar installations across the planet. Captain Zethkar remained the most cautious member of their group, though even he had begun to adapt to their new circumstances. His natural leadership abilities were enhanced by the planet's communication networks, allowing him to coordinate with their guide creatures with increasing sophistication. There are definite artificial signatures ahead, he observed, reading the enhanced displays that their modified equipment now provided. Multiple species, advanced technology, but all integrated into the planetary systems. When they finally reached the settlement, the sight that greeted them exceeded even Marcus's expanding expectations. The structures rose from the landscape like organic skyscrapers, their surfaces flowing and shifting with the same lifelike properties they'd learned to work with in their own shelter. But these buildings were vast, complex installations that clearly housed hundreds or thousands of inhabitants. More remarkable was the diversity of species moving through the settlement spaces. Marcus counted representatives from at least 12 different galactic civilizations, many of which were supposedly extinct or missing. They worked alongside creatures he didn't recognize at all, beings that might have evolved on worlds beyond the galactic rim. Their guide creature communicated with others of its kind as they approached the settlement's main entrance. Within minutes, a delegation emerged to greet them, and Marcus was startled to recognize familiar species among the group. "Is that a Valorian, Dr. Tutrefe?" Uith asked, her sensors confirming what they could all see. The being approaching them was indeed Valorian, but modified in ways that challenged understanding. Its traditional crystalline body structure had been enhanced with what appeared to be Kitharan biotechnology, creating a hybrid form that radiated both familiar intelligence and alien capabilities. "Welcome, survivors of the stellar harmony," the Valorian said, its voice carrying harmonics that Marcus felt as much as heard. "I am Research Coordinator Velmoth, formerly of the exploration vessel Star's Edge." Marcus recognized the name. The Star's Edge had been listed as missing for over 20 years, one of the early expeditions that had attempted to survey Kithara Prime. "Your ship was declared lost with all hands," Captain Zethkar said. "From the perspective of the galactic community, yes," Velmoth agreed. "But as you're learning, Kithara Prime offers alternatives to conventional survival." The Valorian led them through the settlement, and Marcus was amazed by what he saw. The buildings weren't just structures. They were living systems that responded to the needs of their inhabitants. Walls shifted to create new rooms as needed. Surfaces provided information displays or communication interfaces, and the whole complex hummed with an energy that felt organic rather than technological. "How many species are represented here?" Communications Officer Veltar asked, her trunk swaying as she tried to process the electromagnetic complexity of the environment. "Currently, we have representatives from 47 different galactic civilizations," Velmoth replied, "plus 16 species from beyond the known galaxy and 3 forms of artificial intelligence that achieved consciousness through interaction with the planet's systems." They were taken to what Velmoth called the Integration Center, a vast space where newcomers learned to work with Kitharan systems. Marcus was surprised to find that the center contained workshops, laboratories, and training facilities that would have been the envy of any galactic research institution. "The planet doesn't just teach survival," Velmoth explained. "It offers the opportunity to transcend the limitations that individual species face when working alone. Look around you. Every being here has achieved capabilities that would be impossible within their original biological or technological constraints." Marcus watched a group of researchers working on what appeared to be a dimensional manipulation project. A Kethmor warrior, whose species was known for military prowess rather than scientific achievement, was collaborating with a Zephyrian quantum physicist and what looked like a mobile plant organism on equations that hurt Marcus's head to contemplate. "The planet enhances intelligence?" Dr. Yikwith asked. "The planet provides tools for enhancement," Velmoth corrected. "What individuals do with those tools depends on their commitment to growth and cooperation." Over the following days, Marcus and his crewmates were introduced to research projects that challenged every assumption they'd held about the limits of science and technology. Transportation systems that moved objects through folded space, communication networks that operated faster than light speed, medical techniques that could restore life to recently deceased organisms, and energy systems that tapped directly into the quantum foundations of reality. But more impressive than the technology was the collaboration. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The territorial disputes and resource conflicts that plagued normal galactic civilization simply didn't exist here. Why? Marcus asked during a meeting with senior researchers from multiple species. What makes cooperation possible here when it fails everywhere else? Resource abundance, explained a being that Marcus couldn't immediately classify, though it seemed to be partially mechanical and partially organic. The planet provides everything needed for advanced research and comfortable living. There's no scarcity to fight over. Plus, the integration process added a researcher who appeared to be human, though extensively modified. When you've been enhanced by Kitharan biotechnology, you understand that individual advancement is meaningless without collective progress. In the few days since their arrival, he'd begun to notice changes in his own thinking. Problems that had seemed impossibly complex now revealed elegant solutions. Connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena became obvious. And most importantly, he found himself naturally considering the impact of any action on the community as a whole. There's something else, Captain Zethkar observed during a private conversation with his crew. We've been here for over a week, and no one has mentioned rescue or return to normal galactic civilization. Because most of us don't want to return, Dr. Yixwith said quietly. Look at what we're learning. Look at what we're becoming. Why would we want to go back to the limitations and conflicts of normal space? Communications Officer Veltar had been unusually quiet during their stay, and Marcus suspected he knew why. You've been monitoring galactic communications, haven't you? What's happening out there? Veltar's trunk swayed with distress. War. 3 different conflicts have escalated since we've been here. The Valorian Republic is fighting the Kethmore Empire over the Sigma Proxima system. The Trade Federation has imposed sanctions on 12 independent worlds. And there are reports of entire colonies being destroyed in territorial disputes. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with Cathara's environment. The galaxy they'd left behind seemed increasingly primitive and self-destructive compared to what they'd discovered here. So what do we do? Engineer Nixel asked. Do we stay here and continue our research while the galaxy destroys itself? Or, Marcus said slowly, do we find a way to share what we've learned? The question hung in the air between them, and Marcus realized that they had reached the next phase of their education on Kythara Prime. They had learned to survive, to adapt, and to collaborate. Now they faced the most challenging lesson of all, how to responsibly use the knowledge and capabilities they'd gained. The Council of Kythara met in a chamber that existed partially outside normal space-time, its walls shifting between dimensions as the conversation demanded. Marcus sat with his crewmates among representatives from dozens of species, all facing the same fundamental question that had shaped Kytharan civilization for millennia. What responsibility did they bear toward the galaxy beyond their enhanced world? The pattern is always the same, explained Elder Thessarian. A being so old and modified that its original species was no longer identifiable. Explorers arrive, learn to survive, discover our capabilities, and eventually face the choice. Stay and continue evolving, or return to share knowledge with their home civilizations. And what typically happens? Captain Zethkar asked. Both, Research Coordinator Velmoth replied. Some choose to remain and contribute to our ongoing research. Others return to their people with carefully selected knowledge that can help their civilizations advance without destroying themselves. Marcus studied the historical records that the Kytharan systems made available to his enhanced consciousness. Over the past 1,000 years, hundreds of lost expeditions had faced this same decision. Some chose integration, becoming permanent residents of Kythara's research communities. Others became ambassadors, returning to normal space with technologies and wisdom that slowly elevated their civilizations. The Valorian meditation techniques that revolutionized galactic mental health treatments, Dr. Jen. Yixith read from the records. The Kethmore agricultural advances that ended the food shortage crisis on 17 worlds. The Zephyrian quantum stabilizers that made faster-than-light travel safe for civilian use. All of these innovations came from Kythara, from beings who learned here and chose to share their knowledge carefully. Belmoth confirmed, we don't export technology directly. Instead, we prepare individuals to guide their species toward discoveries they can understand and implement responsibly. The weight of this responsibility pressed on Marcus as he considered his options. The communications array in his enhanced shelter continued to monitor galactic frequencies, bringing daily reports of conflicts, resource wars, and territorial disputes that could be solved with knowledge that was commonplace on Cathara Prime. But he also understood the dangers. Technologies that seemed simple and beneficial to his enhanced understanding could be catastrophically dangerous in the wrong hands. The planet's bioenhancement systems could create super soldiers if militarized. The energy manipulation techniques could power weapons capable of destroying star systems. The consciousness enhancement methods could be used for mind control on a galactic scale. There are safeguards, Engineer Nixal observed, her crystalline-enhanced petals reflecting patterns she was reading from the planet's data networks. The technologies won't function properly without the ethical integration that comes from extended exposure to Kitharan systems. Precisely, agreed a researcher Marcus had learned was originally human, though now so enhanced that the classification seemed meaningless. The planet doesn't just teach technical knowledge. It fundamentally alters how beings think about cooperation, resource management, and responsibility to others. This was the key insight that Marcus had been struggling to understand. Cathara Prime wasn't just a repository of advanced technology. It was a transformation engine, a system designed to take beings, driven by scarcity, competition, and individual survival, and gradually convert them into cooperative, abundance-minded entities who naturally prioritized collective welfare. How long does the process take? Ewith asked. It varies by species and individual, Elder Thessarian replied. Minimum integration for safe knowledge transfer typically requires 2 to 5 standard years. Full integration can take decades or centuries, depending on how far an individual chooses to evolve. Marcus felt the pull of both options. The research opportunities on Cathara were literally infinite. The planet's systems could enhance his consciousness to levels where he could comprehend and contribute to projects that spanned multiple dimensions and timeline branches. The community of researchers represented the finest minds from across known space and beyond, working on problems that could reshape the fundamental nature of reality. But the galaxy beyond Cathara was dying. Every day brought new reports of conflicts that could be prevented, suffering that could be alleviated, and civilizations that could be elevated if they had access to even the most basic Kitharan knowledge. "I want to return," Marcus announced during a crew meeting in their enhanced shelter, but not immediately, and not permanently. His crewmates looked at him with expressions that mixed understanding with concern. "I want a complete enough integration that I can safely share selected knowledge with Earth and the human colonial authority," he continued. "But I also want to maintain my connection to Cathara so I can continue learning and eventually return." "The Ambassador Path," Captain Zethkar said thoughtfully. "It's been done before, many times." Communications Officer Veltar confirmed, her enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity allowing her to access historical records directly from the planet's data networks. There are currently 47 active ambassadors operating throughout the galaxy. They maintain their enhanced capabilities while working within normal galactic civilization. Dr. Ixwith had been studying the medical implications of the integration process. The biological changes are reversible to some degree, but the consciousness enhancement appears to be permanent. Once you've experienced Kitharan-level awareness, you retain that perspective even when operating with baseline biology. This was both encouraging and concerning. Marcus would be able to function in normal human society while maintaining the enhanced understanding he developed on Cathara. But he would also be permanently aware of how much more was possible, how many problems could be solved, how much suffering could be prevented if his species was ready for more advanced knowledge. "There's another consideration," Engineer Nixal said quietly. "We represent multiple species. If we all choose the ambassador path, we could coordinate efforts across multiple civilizations simultaneously. The idea was ambitious beyond anything attempted in galactic history. Instead of each species receiving Kitharan knowledge in isolation, they could work together to implement cooperative solutions to shared problems. The Galactic Council has been trying to achieve that kind of cooperation for centuries, Captain Zethkar observed. They failed because each species prioritizes its own interests. But we've been changed by our experience here, Dr. Yixith pointed out. We understand cooperation at a level that transcends species loyalty. We could serve as bridges between civilizations that normally can't work together. Marcus felt excitement building as the implications became clear. They weren't just choosing between staying or leaving. They were choosing to become catalysts for a transformation that could eventually elevate the entire galaxy to Kitharan levels of cooperation and abundance. It won't be easy, Research Coordinator Velmoth warned when they presented their proposal to the Kitharan Council. Ambassador work requires careful balance. Share too much knowledge too quickly, and you risk creating chaos or militarization. Share too little, and civilizations remain trapped in their current limitations. We understand, Marcus replied. But we also understand that the current galactic situation is unsustainable. The conflicts are escalating, resources are becoming scarcer, and multiple civilizations are approaching technological levels where they could accidentally destroy themselves. Elder Thessarian's form shifted through several dimensional phases as it considered their proposal. You would begin with your own species, establishing foundations for cooperative thinking and resource management, then gradually extend your influence to allied civilizations, building networks of enhanced individuals who can guide policy and technological development. Exactly, Doctor. UWITH confirmed. Medical advances that promote psychological integration, engineering innovations that encourage resource sharing, communication technologies that make empathy and cooperation more natural. The timeline would be measured in centuries, Captain Zethkar added. Gradual transformation rather than revolutionary disruption. The Council deliberated for 3 days, during which Marcus and his crew continued their integration training. By the time the decision came, they had achieved levels of enhancement that would allow them to function as effective ambassadors while maintaining their connection to Kitharan systems.
Your proposal is approved, Elder Tetharian announced.
But with conditions. You will return to normal space in stages, allowing each civilization to adapt to your enhanced presence gradually. You will maintain communication with Kithara through quantum entanglement networks that we will establish, and you will return here periodically for advanced training and coordination with other ambassador teams. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility that was almost overwhelming. They were about to become pioneers in the most ambitious uplift project in galactic history. As they prepared for their departure, standing in their enhanced shelter that had become far more sophisticated than any human habitat, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They had crashed on what was supposed to be a death world. Instead, they had discovered a community of advanced beings working on problems that could reshape the galaxy. But more than that, they had discovered what was possible when beings chose cooperation over competition, abundance thinking over scarcity fear, and collective advancement over individual gain. The shuttle that would take them back to normal space was itself a marvel of Kitharan biotechnology, capable of bridging the gap between their enhanced world and the limitations of baseline galactic civilization. As they boarded the vessel, Marcus knew they were beginning the most important mission in human history. The galaxy was about to learn that there were alternatives to the endless cycle of conflict and competition that had defined civilization for millennia. And it would learn this lesson from a group of survivors who had once been stranded on an impossible world, only to discover that impossibility was just another problem waiting for the right solution.